Greetings and a warm welcome from me, astrologer Patrick Arundell. Today, in the latest of my deep dive videos, I'm going to explore the transit of Mercury, which speeds through the sign of Aquarius from the 5th of February to the 23rd, 19 days. The winged messenger doesn't usually hang around, of course, but this will be the first time that Mercury applies to Pluto in Aquarius for over 220 years. So it is a truly momentous event. As ever, I'm going to explore the archetypes of Mercury through its rulership of Gemini, of Virgo, what we can expect in Aquarius, the event chart, the upcoming aspects, and then I'm going to give you a flavour of what you can expect for your sun or ascendant sign over those 19 days. New to my channel, it's great to have you with us. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please share them. I'll answer them, but other people may do as well. If you're a returning visitor, all your support, views and subscriptions mean an awful lot to me. I am actually making my way towards 120,000 subs. If you've yet to subscribe, I'd be honoured if you did so now. If you have already, I'm very grateful for that support. If you're finding your fascination with astrology is growing and you want to make that transition from sun sign astrology to learning more about natal astrology based on your birth data, why not take advantage of my special offer? You can get your life roadmap report, your character analysis, which will give you searing insights into what really shapes you, the patterns that have played out in your life so far. A more intimate understanding of these can help you to seize opportunities more firmly going forwards and to understand some of the snags that we all experience in life. Also, you can get your 12-month transit report. That's the moving planets in the sky interacting with your unique map. 30% off, and you'll also get your Zodiac, Chinese, Indian and love forecast for year 2024 totally free. Please see the link below. So if you'd like to get your free Mercury download, please see the link below for that. So Mercury speeds into the sign of Aquarius for 19 days from the 5th of February. Later on the 5th, it forges an exact conjunction with Pluto, which I will explore shortly. But let's first of all just unpack the archetypes for Mercury. It rules two signs that are mutable. The first is Gemini, an air sign, and that's sign 3. The second is Virgo, an earth sign, and that's sign 6. Now I feel a lot of people perceive the winged messenger Mercury as very much associated with that Gemini energy, quick-witted, very flexible, artful, maybe at times a bit cunning. It's the link between the higher world and our earthly existence, so it's passing on those messages. It's about talk and thought, so it's how we find our voice in the sign of Gemini. But it's also about our everyday environment, our connection to our neighbours, siblings, technology, very quick moving stuff. But through its rulership of Virgo, an earth sign, it's very much more to do with precision, being meticulous, and using the communicational dimension to find ways to help and assist others, so to be of service. But that ability to sift through information for the greater good can often be linked towards medicine, health, hygiene, and food distribution. So people who have strongly Virgoan charts or Mercury and Virgo charts or Mercury in the 6th house will often be in roles which give them that opportunity to be very metronomic in their approach, but in a way which provides tangible outcomes for others or themselves. Now, in the sign of Aquarius, the interesting thing about Mercury moving into Aquarius is it hits that first 2.5 degree toward the 12th harmonic, so the Uranian energy is really electrified, and that gives Mercury in Aquarius a progressive outlook on life. And of course, Aquarius, like Gemini, is an air sign, but unlike Gemini, is a fixed sign. So Gemini being flexible and mutable, Aquarius has that duality. Its other ruler is Saturn, which really appreciates continuity. So what Mercury can do here is be a good link between the stability and the more foundational energies of Capricorn, which is a lot to do with the tangible world, and that more progressive, innovative and forward-thinking energy that comes from the sign of Aquarius. So what we can all do over this next 19 days is to think about our future, because of course Mercury is about thinking, not just about speaking. Certainly our mental faculties can ramp up because there is another factor here. Mercury is exalted in the sign of Aquarius, but secondly also rules the second decan. So from the 12th to the 18th of February, Mercury will be in that part of Aquarius where it is the sub-ruler, and it can truly sparkle for sure. But we also have to remember that the sign of Aquarius is where the sun is detrimented, and the sun is very much about warmth, affection and manifesting and radiating things, whereas Aquarius is much more about detachment. So Mercury here, a little bit more impersonal, cool even. But there's one thing that I feel that we're all going to have an opportunity to appreciate over the next 19 days, and that is our network. The sign of Aquarius is very much about community. It's where we can be collegiate, cooperative and collaborative. So whether it's through our work or it is through our social situation or the sports teams we support, or it's about our passions in terms of our higher beliefs, Mercury's going to help to rev things up. Now, even if you're naturally someone who likes your own company more, you may find that there is some connection that develops to others that can be beneficial. But causes, higher truths, is a big part of what Aquarius is about. This is the sign, you obviously have heard that it's the water bearer, but why is it an air sign? It's because the water bearer is intrinsically linked to baptism. So that's the higher truth. It's about going beyond the physical realm of Capricorn, which is the sign of culmination in the material sphere. Aquarius is going beyond that. It's finding that spark of inspiration. And sometimes that does come from things that are beyond just our own individual agendas. It's important to understand that Aquarius energy isn't exclusively about networking, friendships, planning our future, innovation, being a bit zany in our approach. It is also about celebrating our individuality whilst not necessarily separating ourselves from others. So it is truly a wonderful opportunity for any kind of cooperative effort. So Mercury has been building up in its conjunction with Pluto from the 3rd, when it was in its last degrees of the sign of Capricorn, so on the anaretic point, and then moving on the 5th into Aquarius. It connects later that day, as I mentioned before, to Pluto. Now, anyone who has Mercury applying to Pluto in their natal chart is going to be a powerful communicator, someone who can be very persuasive, but also an incredible ability, if they're aspected well, to really penetrate deep Pluto into information perceptively and understand exactly what's going on. Now, if you believe in telepathy, I feel that that can be something that we can experience over the next 19 days. And as Pluto gets more embedded in the sign of Aquarius after its brief interlude back into Capricorn from the 2nd of September, that kind of theme is going to be much more to the fore. So if you are somebody who really loves investigating things, delving deep into the depths, Pluto, uncovering mysteries, Pluto, you'd like to write that novel that's based on forensic detective work, it's time to don your Mac, because this aspect will really help you. It's also important for us all collectively to understand that Pluto can be about power, and ideas can be used in a very powerful way in order to convey a message. Now, if that message is for the greater good, which is Aquarius at its very best, all is well and good. If, however, somebody uses their intellectual knowledge in an arrogant way, somehow to put somebody down or to try to be superior, that's not such a great look. So I'm just sharing on the screen now with you the event chart, so you can see that Mercury there up in Aquarius in the 11th house based on this solar perspective with the ascendant at 0 degrees Aries on the vernal point. So what's really interesting about this is that if we take the two rulers of Aquarius, Saturn is forging a very constructive link to Jupiter going on to the 25th of March, a sextile, and Uranus, the modern ruler of Aquarius, is in a great link to Venus, still in the sign of Capricorn, along with Mars. In fact, Mars is pretty close to being in trine with Uranus as well, not quite as close as Venus, which itself is not exactly in trine. So we can see that there's some Capricornian energy that's still feeding into this theme or this time that we're going through, all of us together. So innovation that's practical and gives us some kind of tangible benefit is definitely going to be exciting. But with Saturn in the second solar house of the sign of Aquarius, where Mercury and Pluto are, that suggests that we're all having to become much more aware of a new financial reality. In terms of the upcoming aspects, Mercury is in a square with Jupiter, which is exact on the 10th of February, and builds up from the 7th and ends on the 12th within 3 degrees. Mercury square Jupiter. We could encounter somebody who has a kind of a very big opinion of their idea, Jupiter, and is keen to really express that with enthusiasm, and that's a nice trait to have. But it's important with that particular aspect that we don't promise more than we can realistically deliver. And also if we're buying something, we just check out that what we're going to get is actually what we think we're going to get. Now by February the 17th, a much more challenging aspect is developing. In fact, starts to build up from the 14th and it's ebbing away from the 18th within 3 degrees. And that's the square to Uranus. But by this time in the month, we are going to have Mars and Venus in the sign of Aquarius, and particularly in regard to Mars applying to Pluto, that is a really potent influence. If you recall, when the situation in Israel really started to ignite, it was when Mars and Pluto were in a square. So the two rulers of Scorpio coming together this month on the 13th, but then this square between Mercury and Uranus really does point towards the outpouring of frustration, I feel, particularly around injustice in terms of pay and terms and conditions. Now, if you recall, in terms of my overall forecast for year 2024, because we do have 4 fire Mercury retrogrades, and also we have that brief retreat in the sign of Virgo in the early autumn. But because of those fire Mercury retrogrades, there is going to be disruption to transport and distribution this year, unfortunately. And also because Uranus is in the sign of Taurus, it's about food production, and Mercury obviously can be to do with distribution. It's not just to do with how we think and speak. Mercury and Jupiter, distribution, trade and commerce. So this particular aspect is going to see the dissatisfaction that's been building up for some while, where, for example, we had the COVID outbreak in Britain. It was clap for the carers, and then it seems only a few months later, the health professionals that really put their lives on the line, and in some cases lost them, are just being disregarded in terms of increasing their packages, which doesn't take into account the cost of living rises. Now we've got a mass demonstration developing in Texas. We've had lorries used to blockade in Canada. We've seen that in Romania and Poland. We've also got tractors pouring into the centre of Paris because of their unhappiness with the agricultural situation. And a lot of this, I feel, is linked to not being heard. So Mercury is about expressing ourselves. It's about feeling that we're respected, particularly in the sign of Aquarius. In the sign of Capricorn, it may be more about the business proposition. In Aquarius, it's about, okay, you've got my work and my labour, but how much do you actually care about me as the human being? And of course, with all the technology, AI, robotics, that are absolutely pouring into situations, this is causing us collectively to feel fearful. So I feel that Mercury's journey through the sign of Aquarius, along with the arrival of Mars the day before Valentine's Day, that's going to be a hot day for some people and a quite fiery one for others, and of course Venus brings us with the Sun, brings together a real focus, a stellium in Aquarius. And so we are going to see that push and pull between what we're used to and what we feel comfortable with as kind of Capricornian, more traditional Aquarius energy, and that more progressive, higher spiritual truth that everybody wants to feel that they are not just a number, that as a human being their voices are heard. Now please stay with me as I give you your insight for the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces for the Sun or the Ascendant for those next 19 days. So Aries, ever since Saturn moved into your 12th house on the 7th of March last year, things have fundamentally changed. But of course you had those two major lunations in your sign, one of which was a solar eclipse. But if you recall, that solar eclipse actually clashed with Pluto. So that was Pluto's initial sojourn into the sign of Aquarius that began on the 27th of March last year, but ended on the 11th of June. It was just 11 short weeks. But Saturn's been a constant since then in your 12th house, and it really has, I feel, seen you at somewhat of a crossroads. But that doesn't mean to say that one of the paths forwards is not exciting for you. It's just that you may still be slowly but surely dealing with the separation from things that didn't work out before. So it's possible that you could reconnect to some friends from the past with Mercury's transition through Aquarius, or you can make some new ones, or you can find yourself becoming more motivated around the collective good or the collective needs of everybody. So I feel that you have an opportunity to use your drive and passion to great effect through this transition, and the second half of February is really going to give you the chance to fire up some new beginnings if there have been some endings or some disappointments or separations since March the 7th last year. So Taurus, for you, there's been a lot of excitement and expansion potential with Uranus in your sign for around 6 years and Pluto through the sign of Capricorn. And even on this event, you still have your ruler Venus in a beautiful location, your 9th house, along with Mars, loves being in your 9th house in Capricorn. And also the midpoint for this event is in Capricorn too. So you can still open up things and look at things in different ways. Anything to do with higher knowledge is still very exciting for you, but I feel that what you're looking for now is greater recognition. Your desire to have your voice heard for you is much more to do with your personal skill sets. It's much more to do with you wanting to be recognised as a leader, as someone of authority, someone who has special skills or talents or personality. And you can showcase these. But there is a paradox, because Pluto in the 10th house can tempt us to grapple with raising our profile, but in another way can see us a bit put off by it as well. So it just depends on the type of person you are. But if you are very goal orientated and very motivated to improve your material lot in life, you want to get that better job with the better package and the bigger property, well, now is your time. You know, February is going to be a time when you're really going to be pushing hard to be recognized. You need to feel that you have some influence, that people respect you in some way. But that old saying of we can only earn, we can't demand respect, is something to bear in mind. But if you have been thinking about retraining, pivoting to a different sector, using past experiences and skills in a new way, this is a great opportunity to do so. So Gemini, Mercury moving into the sign of Aquarius is obviously really good for you in terms of the air triplicity. That works. The fact that Mercury is exalted in Aquarius, that works. The fact that Mercury governs the second decan, that works. What's not to like? Well, it's just that For you, Aquarius is house 9, which has a kind of Sagittarian flavour. So if we think about it, Mercury in Sagittarius is actually detrimented. So it's going to be important when sharing information or grappling with anything of a legal nature, the 9th house, planning travel, the 9th house, international affairs, anything to do with contracts, that you really concentrate carefully. Pluto's going to help you with that, to be honest. And if you are someone with a powerful message, you know, you're a writer or you have information or knowledge that you'd like to reach a wider audience with, whether you publish your own book, whether you start your own blog, or if you've got a website already, you achieve much greater distribution or coverage, this is a fantastic opportunity for you. If you've ever thought about learning a foreign language, what a great opportunity to do so. But I feel that the movement of Mercury to join Pluto in your 9th house also requires something back from you. Because being a Gemini, ruled by Mercury of course, so there's a mutual receptivity, your nimbleness, speed of thought, but quick thinking can see you pivot around situations so much that your dance around the information can sometimes stop you actually embracing something that is much more enriching from a philosophical viewpoint, which is the 9th house. So it's higher truths. Your sign governs everyday conversations and communications. The 9th house is those higher conversations. So if you do find yourself having some big chats or learning a lot about a new subject or traveling somewhere, you might find yourself much more interested if you are on the move about the cultural dimension of where you visit, the historical artifacts that you could visit in a museum to get a flavour of how people used to live. That immersion in that cultural dimension can be so exciting for you. I feel you need to challenge yourself a little bit is the 9th house is also about truth. And if there are some parts of your situation that are stuck and you are really struggling to move something forwards, you're being asked to really reach into yourself to get down to what's truly essentially you. The 9th house can also be about where we escape from something. It's about freedom and independence. So to give you an archetype here in terms of a famous person, Jurgen Klopp, the German football manager, is leaving a job that he clearly loves because he feels he's exhausted. Well, his sun is late in Gemini, squaring up with Neptune, so that makes sense that he's a bit weary. But the 9th house can be where we have to speak our truth, or we have a choice where we can speak our truth, but we can also escape something that's closing us in and is a bit self-limiting. So those are all the themes for you, Gemini. So Cancer, as Mercury makes its way into Aquarius to link up with Pluto, we still have the svelte Venus and the raw Mars in your 7th house. If you like, the steel fist of Mars and the velvet glove of Venus when it comes to your relationships. Venus gives you diplomacy, Mars that little bit more resistance, and making sure that people know what your boundaries are. But of course the 8th house is where we go from the conversation of the 7th house to the actual investigation of whether we can really get devoted or we decide to quickly move on. The 8th house, very, very Scorpionic. Now, if you are someone who's really interested in making the most of your resources, you know, you're an entrepreneur or you like to move your assets around through different sort of trusts and investments, then clearly the 8th house and Mercury combining with Pluto can give you an unparalleled ability to dive into the data and really decipher what the true meaning of situations are. But the 8th house isn't just about shared finances, long-term finances, legacies, banking, pensions and so forth. It is also in a more spiritual context where we're most invested or where we struggle because we can't achieve that level of intimacy with that situation or that person, or we don't get enough of a challenge. Scorpio energy, the 8th house, is very complex. So you could find yourself really starting to analyze things that you may not have thought quite so deeply about in the past. And, even the meaning of life. It sounds like an existential question to ask. We all might think about it occasionally and then think, well, no, have a cup of tea and, what's something that's cheerful. But seriously, we are all part of a cycle, and Pluto, as far as some astrologers are concerned, is very much to do with karma. So think about those connections. Think about why you have them, whether they're practical around finance, business, the way you are in terms of close connections, but also think about it in terms of things like sex, life and death. This is a real opportunity over these next months and what will be years with Pluto's help to really grapple with these things in a very, very profound way. But the other thing that I feel that Mercury and Pluto combining together can do is also make you much more conscious of your desires. Now, because you're a sign that generally likes to avoid confrontation, when things are tricky on the relationship front, it's a bit of a pattern, I feel, for you to just go inside of your shell and not actually engage with the other side. And that may have been a bit of a pattern that's gone on for a long time, perhaps most of your life, just speculating. And it's possible that someone's going to confront you about your tendency to do that, because they may feel it's almost like saying, well, I don't want to play this game of football anymore, but I'm actually picking up the ball and walking off the field, so no one else is going to play the game either. So some people, I'm not saying this is true of all Cancerian people, but some people can perceive some Cancerians as being very, very powerful indeed. And the 8th house energy can be to do with deep truths, and the passion that comes from the combination of Mercury and Pluto could be that someone is going to speak back to you in terms of how they view how you've been around relationships through that Pluto transition through the sign of Capricorn since 2008. And I'm just flagging it up for you. It's not any one way. It just depends on how you are, how your environment is, what your experience has been, how much fortune you've had, how easy or tough life has been. But if you have been someone who has had the ability or the power to control things a little bit by withdrawal, someone could push back and make you more aware of that, or do a withdrawal towards you. So Leo, Mercury moving into Aquarius and combining with Pluto, it's really, really powerful. Mercury in the 7th house for me is great in a way, because it helps us to be a bit more dispassionate. Mercury moving through the 6th house can be a bit ratty, a bit irritable. It's highly strung. It likes things perfect. If things aren't quite perfect, it gets a bit stressed out. Details matter, all very Virgo. In the 7th house, even though it is hosted by Aquarius, for you, much more Libra, and it's about finding that balance. You see things differently to me. That's absolutely fine. Why should everyone have the same opinion as me? Could go that way. But what you can get when we have an opposition between the Sun and Pluto, in particular, which is essentially, and the Sun and Mercury, is you can get quite trenchant opinions, and people can be quite dogmatic. Well, it's my way, that's how I see it. So just be aware that you could encounter someone like that, or if you have a conversation with someone and suddenly it gets a bit heavy, maybe with a partner or a friend, it would be easy to kind of get a bit tense and sort of your hackles come up and rather than do that, try to let the dialogue keep flowing, because if we actually receive that first bit of discomfort, that turbulence, in a less alarmed and frightened way, then we can have the dialogue, Mercury, but also the meaning and the depth, Pluto, and that can unlock mysteries. And if something has felt a bit edgy, ratty, perhaps, with Pluto going through Capricorn over these last 16 years, there have been times when you have felt quite exhausted at times. then this would be a great opportunity to listen to advisors, get new information, different viewpoints and perspectives. You're a fixed sign. Staying as you are can be very comforting to you, but it can also stop oxygen flowing into your situation, the oxygen of knowledge and different perspectives. The other side of this conjunction, of course, is that if you're really serious about someone and you get on really seriously well, the chances are you're going to get very loved up as February goes on. The really ironic thing, Virgo, I feel, is that your attention to detail is your great gift. But like any gift, there's also the polar point of the gift. So your attention to detail means the bigger picture is not so much your focus, because you're working in a very efficient and precise, meticulous way through those details. So the fact that Pluto and now Mercury, your ruler, have moved into your 6th house, that's very redolent of the energy of your sign. So what's this going to be like? Well, I feel that your capacity for details is given more leverage, more heft, more force, but you've got to use that in the right way, because something could bug you that is actually not that important to somebody else, and so you can go all in saying, well, look, I'm really making a sacrifice here, I'm being very conscientious, I'm taking something seriously, I'm turning up, I'm being reliable, all very 6th house energy. With Pluto in the mix, you're kind of wanting to leverage that, and in a positive way. If you're applying for a job and you have that kind of that professionalism and dedication, then that's going to be really, really appreciated. But if it's a case of going back to that small detail, amplifying it through the power of Pluto with the combination of Mercury, everybody else could sort of feel that actually you're getting so much into this that it's becoming almost a bit, to be honest, obsessive. So whatever's going on in your situation at the moment, just widen the lens on the camera, step back a bit. I'm not criticizing that quality you have. I have Pluto in Virgo. So I know that little details are not something I usually miss. Obviously I make mistakes doing these occasionally, because I do so many that often we're doing them really late at night and we're tired, so I might misspeak, say Mars instead of Mercury and stuff like that. I'm far from perfect, but there are certain things that I can be a bit of a perfectionist around. The tidiness of the home, I'm glad you can't see around this room, is not one of them. But seriously, if you've been in a job, for example, because you are very conscientious, where you've really been putting it all in for a long time, and it's actually starting to not have the same level of personal satisfaction, or you can't help people like you used to because you're tired, or it's just a bit dull and repetitive, what actually Mercury aligning with Pluto is urging you to do is to reignite your passion for precisely those themes, but in a new environment that really does bring you back to life. And so in a way, it's like giving yourself permission. Step back and think, where can I use my skill set, either in my personal world, if you are someone who's more typically like the archetype of Virgo, that you like things pretty well organized and slick in your home life, where are the other parts of your life that you could bring a bit more precision to? Would it be, for example, your exercise routines, taking a bit more awareness of nutrition, the type of food that you're cooking, for example? All those kind of small elements obviously build up into something bigger, and that's what Pluto's going to be urging you to grapple with. So I can almost say for certainty that most Virgos will start this period from now to when Pluto moves into the sign of Pisces, but won't be in the same job at the end of that period, in my humble opinion. Pluto will transform things for you, and you get sort of a real mighty hit of the intensity of the combination of Mercury and Pluto at this point. But the other irony, the second irony, is someone could be very critical towards you and highlight something that they feel that you're not seeing, and really zone in on it in a way which is a little bit uncomfortable. Just be aware of that. It could be an aunt's sixth house, or an uncle, sixth house. It could be a colleague, sixth house. It could be that you're going to have an appointment that you need to go to. Say, for example, at the dentist. I need to go badly. And it's like, you know what it's like with a hygienist. You're not cleaning your teeth properly. You're not flossing. You need to clean with your left hand if you're right-handed as well. All these kind of more meticulous details. Something can come up for you over the next 19 days along these lines. So Libra, really exciting, I feel, because obviously Pluto moving into your fifth solar house is an opportunity to start to express yourself, because the fifth house is Sun. It's in kinship with the sign of Leo. It's just hosted in Aquarius, which, of course, you know, is a bit logical, a bit zany, a bit different. So if you're someone who's tended to sort of not want to rock the boat because of that part of you that likes to keep an equilibrium, definitely an opportunity to start strutting your stuff, feeling much better about your sense of attractiveness. But remember, Mercury in the fifth house is very playful. And also, Mercury Leo energy likes to be heard. So, you know, if you have got artistic, creative talents, you know, you have got flair that you want to showcase, great opportunity over these next 19 days. Pluto's going to give you more traction, more amplification of the way you think, but also the way you express yourself. And part of the reason for this, Libra, is that Mercury moving through the fourth house is not an easy journey. And of course it happened in two phases, and also we had the retrograde, and also we had the post-retrograde shadow. So really the period from the 1st of December, even though we had Mercury inverting back into Sagittarius on the 23rd, and then going direct on the 2nd, and then back into Capricorn on the 14th of January before coming out of the shadow on the 21st, and now moving into Aquarius, means that there's been a lot of soul searching. Concurrent to that, of course, there was the logjam between the planets in Sagittarius, your third house of everyday communication, and Saturn and Neptune in the sixth house of obligations and responsibilities. So all sorts of ordinary emails and demands just felt very wearing. So I think one of the great things that you're going to find is that the cheeky playfulness energy of Mercury just switches on. And if you have felt that you've been a bit off form, not quite finding the enthusiasm for things that you would really like, you can find that your sense of humour really sparks up, and you're wanting to just be much more creative and productive around your ideas and your inspiration. But also the fifth house can be about romance, can also be about socialising. And I feel that February is going to be a very powerful month in that regard. It may start, or may have started off, a little bit slowly with a lot of influence, including your ruler still in the fourth house, home changes, decoration, thinking about additions to the family, so forth and so on. But as the month goes on, at the heart of February, it's going to be pure rock and roll. Buckle up, Libra. It's going to be fun. It really is. So Scorpio, what makes this event immediately important to you is because of Pluto, your higher octave modern ruler. Now, traditional astrology focuses on your sign as being ruled by Mars, and Mars in Capricorn likes being there, very much about the conveyance of ideas, third house. So very Gemini. So Mercury moving into Aquarius can see you thinking or talking a lot to people in your everyday world, perhaps a greater connection to siblings. It may be that you're going to think about business from home. Now, so many people work some portion of the week from home. I always remember when I first started this business, which was a Saturn return ago, so it was about 29 and a half years ago. And in those days, working from home was considered to be really naff. If you worked from home, you you completely lacked credibility. Now it's like if you go to work, you completely lack credibility. But seriously, if you have been doing some work from home, but the environment hasn't been ideal for you, like, you know, you're next to the ironing, or your partner's screaming at you to go and collect the kids from school, you know, there are obviously upsides to it. You know, if you've had enough, you can go for a walk around the block with the dog. But there are definitely things that can make it a little bit more awkward. So if you need to think about adapting your space, the rulership of Aquarius is about space, but also how you can define yourself within your family in terms of your voice and your ideas. That's important as well. So if you are trying to work from home and people are running in and not really appreciating that you need to concentrate, maybe some boundaries can be put in place. But I feel seriously with Pluto moving into your fourth house, okay, it's going to have that brief sojourn back into Capricorn from the 2nd of September to the 18th of November, but then it's in for the long term. So a lot of Scorpio people are definitely going to be thinking about where they live, how they live there, and with whom, and some kind of evolution around that area. It could be that having a family, it could be about renovating, because Pluto can be the phoenix, rebuilding. Of course, it can be that things can start to become a bit more awkward. So if there's family politics that have been swept under the proverbial carpet for longer than you can care to remember, then they could start to come up to the surface, even if it's something you're not keen personally to really look at. It just may be. That's how Pluto works. Sometimes it delivers to us, even though we're not asking for the delivery. Pluto prime could turn up on your door whether you choose it or not. So the best way to deal with Pluto is to engage, and Mercury is about thinking. But Mercury don't like being in the fourth house. What happens with Mercury in the fourth house is that our thoughts or our anxieties go round and round our minds, so it becomes a little bit obsessive potentially, because we find it more difficult to actually then say it out, because it has a Cancerian feel. It can be a bit inward, a bit more subjective. So just be aware of that. The Aquarius energy clearly gives you an opportunity to add some objectivity, some distance, to think about things carefully. And, you know, for you can do this. And the reason you can do this is because analysis is very much part of who you are. You know, you do understand things, have a penetrating way of looking at situations and people, and instinctively very often really working out what their motives are and the way they operate. You are very much the born-again detective. But that detective energy may need to be directed more towards yourself. You know, the fourth house can be very much to do with our need for security, stability, peace, tranquility, to find the right environment. It doesn't just have to be the physical property. It can be our interior home that you're going to be working on a lot in the years to come. And maybe the fourth house of Mercury could see you speaking to someone or helping someone else if you're someone with great understanding of psychology and human nature. So Sagittarius, I'm actually really excited to tell you about this, because I feel that with Pluto going through the second house for so long, it means that Pluto was going through your sign before that. So if we just think in broad terms, for around about 30 years, Pluto has impacted on you in some way or another. You may even have personal planets in Scorpio, so the whole journey could have been longer, and of course Saturn's going round as well. So because that's all, as far as you're concerned, the southern hemisphere of your chart, that's quite subterranean, it's quite inward for a sign that's the legend of being outgoing, gregarious, funny, amusing, inquisitive, knowledgeable, love of travel. Saturn moving into your fourth house last March the 7th, not necessarily easy at all. Neptune being there since 2012, perhaps confusion about emotional identity or where to live at times. Now, of course, with the North Node moving back into Aries mid-July last year, and the two lunations in Aries, March and April, on the face of it, a good thing for you, because that's the 5th house where you can find your passion. And last October, the Libran eclipse, very much about how you're connecting to people in terms of friendships. But Saturn, 4th house, keeps reminding you, how does it feel? And that's not easy for a sign that would rather just move on to the next interesting proposal and project rather than spend too much time navel gazing. So, Mercury pitching up in your 3rd house, the first part of that is that's very Gemini. So that means the pace of life is going to pick up. February is going to turn out to be really, really speedy. I feel the financial side of things is getting better for you at the start of the month. Then you're going to have lots of conversations and connections, and really going to be a lot of drama. And then later in the month, you're going to want to sort of close down a little bit as Mercury moves into Pisces, connects to Saturn, and just mull it all over and download all the sheer intoxicating passion and verve that the month will throw up at its heart. So a lot of powerful conversations are going to unfold. And whereas since Saturn moved into your 4th house, you may have been more protective and inward, now you're going to find your voice and how. You're going to find it big time. And I feel that you're going to feel much more on your usual form. And that's what really pleases me for you. So Capricorn, Mercury moving into the sign of Aquarius, out of your sign, suggests that something you've been working on that's novel, different, and you've had a lot of extra help with wonderful links between Venus and Jupiter, and also Mars and Uranus, pushing you to be more enterprising and daring. Mercury moving into Aquarius can start to see you recognizing the foundation that you're building up, the base. And you're thinking perhaps about money. Everyday money is the 2nd house. But Pluto in the mix, this can be personal. It's about your value. And our value isn't always predicated only on how much we earn. We think it is, but it isn't. That can be part of the equation. Of course it can. What's really important is what our belief of our value is. If we've got a good belief of our self-worth, it's not going to be so much based on money. So that's what you're going to be asked to really analyze, which is what Mercury and Pluto is very much about, analyzing things very carefully. You could also see you thinking carefully about your budget. Are there little cutbacks that you could make? I think many of us have been trying to turn the lights off more, haven't we, with all these energy bill increases. But if that sort of slipped a little bit, a great opportunity to scrutinize things in that systematic, thorough and patient and applied way that you can do better than anyone else. And if you have been galvanizing people recently with some fabulous ideas, now it's about boxing them into something that's lasting and has that sort of firm basis for which you can take the next steps from. I will tell you, however, that once Mars and Venus arrive in your 2nd house, in the case of Venus particularly on the 16th, that could be a moment when something comes through for you financially that you may have striven towards or battled away around for a very long time. But more on that then. So Aquarius, Mercury moving into your sign is truly exciting, not least that it gets out of the 12th house, where it tends to be a bit of a worry wart. Also, it can emphasize sort of ragged nervous energy. We become much more sensitive about conversations in general. And because Pluto has been such a powerful experience over the last 16 years, if there have been separations, disappointments, betrayals, we've spoken about them before, then Mercury moving into your own sign, and mine too, on my birthday, if you like, applying to 0 degrees Aquarius, and connecting to Pluto, means that this is the next stage of the reckoning, of the reignition of you, the individual. Because The 12th house is really, really tough, and there ain't any planet that's harder in the 12th house than Pluto, really. You could argue about Saturn, but Saturn only stays in that area for 2.5 years, not for 16 years. So Pluto has primacy in terms of its cruelty, I feel. Because, of course, Pluto is deep state. It doesn't necessarily show its cards. It's very, very karmic. Sometimes the opposition that we experience from others, they may not even understand why they oppose us. Is it triggered by jealousy? Is it triggered by envy? Is it triggered by fear? Quite possibly, because Aquarian people sometimes have the courage to do things completely different or miles or years ahead of their time, which people don't like, because people like to follow. So if you've really had a tough time because you are someone who spots trends, you have a unique way of being, and you have to exist in a more normal environment, that's probably been a really tough time at moments. So Mercury moving to apply to Pluto is the next stage, along with the Sun, which occurred on, of course, on the 21st of January, of really reigniting your individuality with less fear. It's coming into the moment. The world's coming to you, essentially. You're going to see more and more collaboration, more and more connection between others, networks, alliances. People have similar higher values aligning, because through the collective we can be stronger. But it's also very important to understand with Aquarius energy that it's also about having the confidence to be uniquely different, and how you think about that, and how you feel about being individual. If you've got a good relationship to being individual, you're just going to motor through this. If you're someone who really has found Pluto in the 12th house, has revealed that the world and its proverbial, I'm not sure I should say wife anymore, has not necessarily been very pleasant, then this is a chance to stage the fight back. Part 3, Sun into Aquarius 20th, Pluto 21st, Mercury 5th, Mars 13th, and Venus on the 16th. So a lot more to come from this story, and February promises to be quite the month. So Pisces, Mercury moving into your 12th house, is interesting, because Mercury in the sign of Pisces is detrimented because it's opposite the ruler of Virgo. But also Mercury in Pisces, or the 12th house, can be wonderful things like poetry, things like thinking very carefully about how we can help people in psychological situations. So this can be a powerful time, particularly with Mercury alongside Pluto, to think very carefully about perhaps people from your past, people that you're no longer connected to. You could find yourself hugely nostalgic over the next 19 days at times. It may be that someone is going to turn up. You may find it actually quite challenging. You may find it joyful. It just depends, because everyone's different, everyone's life experience is individual, and everyone's environment is different. And so I feel that thinking about the psychological dimension, Mercury thinking, Pluto thinking about regeneration, rejuvenation. It can also be thinking about our mortality, if I'm honest. Pluto, a planet very much tied to that. But it's not that that is going to be a factor necessarily in Pluto's journey. What it does as it applies to Mercury is ask you to think about it. But also, if you're someone with a fascination for psychology and or healing or spirituality, you're going to feel a real compulsion to grapple with those strands over the next few weeks. And you may at times feel quite mournful, if I'm honest, but there can be points of joy as well if you submit to the process that life is all about movement. And to be fair, your sign has a greater understanding of that than most, because your sign is the sign of culmination in the spiritual dimension. That's why your two planets aren't about borders and boundaries. They're about limitless energy as we disperse. You know, it's a fascinating thing being a Pisces. And also the other thing that you can do with Mercury applying to Pluto is research things. Really dive deep. You know, if you're not satisfied with what you read in the newspaper or seeing online, you're going to dig out some other sources of information, and what you discover can really, really excite you. So if you're really wanting to discover a side of life that's often neglected, the psychological, the subconscious, the wounded, the hurting, the escapist side of life, Pluto and Mercury initially, but Mercury in the 12th house, are certainly going to see you do that in a big way through the next 19 days. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget you can download that free Mercury factoid underneath this video. But for now, I'd be grateful if you would like, comment, share or subscribe.